On the 11th episode of the Camp Owners Podcast, we are taking care of business. Kelly and I look forward to sitting down with Jonathan Gold, the director of Oakcrest Day Camp in New Jersey, where we get his insight into all things business, the cash crunch, and all financial considerations to make 2021 an amazing summer for our campers, our families, and our staff. Welcome to the Camp Owners Podcast, a space for camp owners to talk about the unique aspects of camp ownership and get inspired by each other. We are going to sit down with camp industry experts, leaders, and fellow camp owners to hear how the camp dream transpired for them, learn from each other, and discuss some of the biggest issues in the private camp industry. Hi, everybody. My name is Howie Grossinger, and I'm the co-owner of Camp Robin Hood, a day camp in Toronto, Ontario.
And hello, I am Kelly Shuna. I own and direct a summer day camp in Stillwater, Minnesota. If you're looking on how to find and subscribe to the Camp Owners Podcast, you can either find us online at gocamp.pro/COP or by searching for us in your favorite podcast app. Finally, if you're listening to this and think it would be useful for other camp owners or aspiring camp owners, you can check us out on all of our favorite podcast listening apps.
Well, hello, Kelly. Before we get started, though, we want to give a huge shout out to our podcast sponsor, Camp Brain. Camp Brain is camp management software, which serves over 1,300 camps. They've been doing this since 1994 with 45 dedicated staff to meet your every need. Camp Brain can handle any custom report request you have and creates reports to your exact specifications. I am a proud Camp Brain user for many years, actually since 1994, and I can honestly say that given the system they've created, you as a camp owner or camp director or any members of your team, if you've got a vision for a report or want to enhance anything you're currently working on, the Camp Brain staff would be more than happy to support and help you out. So I encourage you to check out Camp Brain at campbrain.com or call them at 866-485-8885. Today, we're really lucky, Kelly. I'm really excited about this discussion we're about to have. We're really fortunate to have Jonathan Gold with us today to share his insights into all things money as we plan for 2021. Jonathan has been a guest on the Day Camp podcast, which is another podcast on the Go Camp Pro network. And it's always great to share guests and direct content to all of our interested listeners. And Kelly and I really thought, everybody, that the camp owners audience would really benefit from some of Jonathan's observations and his insights in the current climate we're all navigating.
Awesome. I'm super excited to have you, Jonathan. I texted Howie actually and Andy Pritikin after I listened to your podcast with the Day Camp pod. And I was like, oh, I really like that. And I felt like we could continue on, and you touched on some things for owners, but I felt like this would be a great dive into that. So I'm excited for this. Feels like a part 2 of that podcast. And I like your approach. Just here's how it is. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, really glad to be here. I think it's really challenging times for all of us. And I think that, we really have to be very deliberate about our planning in the next 18 months to get through these times. And I want to make sure that, not only for my camps, but other camps have some of the tools they might need. If they don't, if they're probably already doing a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about. But if you're not, then this might be a good resource.
Great. Well, can you tell our guests just a little bit about yourself, about how you got into camp and the camps that you own, and just a little bit about your camp story?
Lifelong, I'm sort of typical lifelong camper. Camp was a, hugely meaningful experience to me. I worked as a director for a number of years. I've been in organized camping professionally as a director now for about 30 years. But not that long as an owner. I bought my first camp in 2002. And then sort of picked up my next 2 on the 5-year rotation. The next 2 years after that, managed to put the deals together. None of the camps were technically for sale, so it was just sort of drive and determination that got through. We operate 3 camps in New Jersey. They're in different parts of the state. And in a normal summer, we're a pretty big organization with 2,500 to 3,000 campers, operating, between the three camps, and we share a lot of insight and management systems and, best practices. So my crew, we get together regularly during the year, so that's always a good thing. Sort of watching how somebody in a different location does the same thing different. Do you know what I mean? And then we pick up on that and you could do this, you could that. So we're constantly sort of improving that way, and that's fun.
Awesome. Well, I think this is going to be an exciting podcast because we have, Jersey represented, and then we have Minnesota Nice. So we really have the direct Jersey approach. We have the Minnesota Nice, and then Canada. Howie's going to just really be the peacemaker and
everybody loves
meld
Canada.
us together. Everyone loves Canada.
Everyone loves Canada. Howie. Yeah, there's nothing bad going on in Canada.
Nothing bad.
No, I'll certainly be direct. That's for sure. But I think the situation calls for that, to be as direct as possible. So we'll definitely go into what my thoughts are on what's happening. At least I just think it's a tough time. I mean, when and you guys know this, when have we ever operated in recent memory with this little future clarity?
Yeah, exactly. It's so true. And I think, as you know, Kelly and myself did not operate our day camps, and you did, and we're all very curious as a way of beginning the conversation is to, first of all, I think that the stuff that Jonathan will share with everybody is relevant to sleepaway and day, and these practices or these things to be thinking about are going to be relevant across the gamut of camps that you operate. But specifically, Jonathan, like maybe you can just tell us, how did the summer go? Your reflection on your ability to manage not only the challenges of the structure of camp and running it, but maybe give us an overview of the success that I know you had.
Well, for sure, in my 30 years, this was the most challenging summer I've ever experienced. I think it called on, as an experienced director, it called on every single skill that we had to operate: communication, financial management, systems management, your ability to innovate and think on the fly, regulatory I mean, everything, you name it. And then on top of that, here in New Jersey, we didn't really get the go to operate until June 8th. So we were caught between a rock and a hard place of I knew, and I don't know, I can't honestly say how, but I knew in my heart that camp was going to be okay. And I knew in my heart that we were going to get open or I was going to die trying. And so when the pandemic hit back in March, I just prepared my people and said, we're opening. Okay. We're not discussing failure's not an option. We're going to open. And I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And we acted as if we were going to open, but we couldn't spend any money because we didn't know we were going to open. So we had to wait and wait and wait and wait until we finally got to go, and then pull the trigger on virtually, hundreds of thousands of dollars of stuff that we needed that normally we would order over, a 9-month period during the year. Bam, all of a sudden now we're so it was a flurry of activity to get open, and we operated about 50 to 60% capacity depending on the camps. But I have two overriding thoughts about the summer. As an experience for my campers and staff, it was the most meaningful and emotionally connected summer I've ever experienced. And the last day of camp was just, everybody was just hysterically in tears and crying because they knew they were going back to sort of the COVID world. As a camp operator, it was probably the most stressful because you were always waiting for that shoe to drop. You're always waiting for the next test on the staff member or the camper test or, whatever it was. And two of our camps operated with zero to no problems. And one of them actually had, a small outbreak where we had to close the camp for a week during the summer. And, I was just waiting for the CNN, NBC, Fox News trucks to all show up and be like, huge outbreak at camp, Pine Grove, blah, 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 so, and it never happened. It never happened. But those 9-10 days while we were waiting to reopen, was good. And parents were hugely supportive of all the decisions we made, so long as we were upfront and communicated what was going on. And I think that was one of the big lessons. It's like, just be transparent. At all. Don't try to hide anything. Just be as transparent as possible, and people trust you, and they trust your decision-making process.
Wow,
So
that's
I
amazing.
wanted,
Yeah, go ahead,
oh, go
Kelly.
ahead, Howie.
No, I was
Well,
just going to say, Jonathan's, sharing of his experience is, mirrors much of what we've learned from others as well. How incredibly supportive parents were, how eager they were. I remember listening to other camp directors say that just the buy-in from families to not be that family kind of thing put them on their best behavior in terms of supporting the missions of camp and things of that kind. And there's no doubt, Jonathan, that we'll get into some of the stuff related to the financial considerations and the things that were on your mind on a daily basis in the summer. But I think it's really nice to see some of the or hear about some of the really positive outcomes that came of the most stressful summer in our industry ever, basically. Kelly, I cut you off, but please.
No, nope, you're good, Howie. Again, you're Canada. You're just, you're the neutral party, Howie. I will let you go.
I'm always
Minnesota nice. It's fine, Howie. It's fine. No, I was curious, we'll talk a little bit about what camp owners should be thinking about, but I'm curious, Jonathan, after going through that, what are you thinking about financially going into 2021? Because in my opinion, it's going to be the same thing again next summer. At least that's what I'm preparing for. So financially specifically, what are you thinking about going into this next summer after what you experienced in 2020?
I think there are a couple of really, really important lessons, and this is a massive reboot for our entire industry. So my lessons from I have again, I'm sort of twofold here. One are my lessons from operating, and then two are, the short answer to your question is cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. Because without cash is like oxygen on a scuba trip, and if you're out, you die. So making sure that we have enough cash to, enough fuel in that airplane to get to where we're going to, which to me is really opening and closing day next summer. So everything that we do is now based. And we just had a meeting of all the full-time employees, and we have about a dozen full-time employees between the three camps, and we pulled them all together. And I said, listen, here's what's governing every single decision that we're making between now and June. And it's going to be our cash position at the time, which is very different from the way we used to manage, where we knew, X, Y, and Z cash was coming in, and we knew the timing of it. Now we don't know that anymore, and that makes operating during the year much trickier. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, not flying my plane into a mountain by managing the cash very, very carefully, and that's sort of where it is now from the operating standpoint. And I don't know if you want to jump right in. For an operating standpoint, we learned some good lessons. One of the big lessons I think that we took away from the summer is we don't need as many people as we thought we needed to run camp. And I think that particularly in day camps, there's a pressure. You'll always hear, oh, we need more people. We need more counselors. We need more people in the kitchen. We need more, we need an extra tennis instructor. You don't. I just think that you have to look at our hiring base, which are a lot of times, college kids and education professionals. And at least here in the United States, I can't speak to Canada, but in the United States, most public school teachers live in what I like to call non-resource constrained environments. Unlike us, where I mean, they think they're in a resource constrained environment, but really they're not. They're being, they're public schools. They're being funded by our tax dollars, and teachers and bus drivers and they all got paid regardless of whether the kids were in school or not. So that's, to me, definition of a non-resource. So they come from a very different culture, and we as the business operators have to operate in a very efficient culture. So your hiring, we can operate with fewer people, and your hiring process now has to be key. You have to take sort of the Container Store approach, which is I want that one person that can be like 2.5 or 3 people. You have to have that one person that so now you have to take a look at your hiring process, and particularly with regard to full-time people and key people in the organization, because you're not going to be able to afford the mistakes like you did in the past. So a hiring mistake now is going to be a lot more costly. So that's one of the big lessons. And the other one is, which goes hand in hand with that, is you have to deflate your payroll. Now, we in summer camp are nice. We're all nice, and we like, we love working with people, and we're people. And I guarantee that all of us have people in our organization that have been with us for a long time, and they've gotten raises every single year. And now you have a tennis instructor or a bike guy that's making a really big salary, but you know what? He's so nice. He's so great. He's been with us for 15 years. And, I know the salary's a lot of whack, but, Jerry, the bike guy, is just wonderful. No, not anymore. You can afford to pay people what you're going to pay people. And if you can get somebody for $3,000 or $4,000 that you're paying, for a job that you're now paying $6,000 for, you have to do it now. So there's probably about 20 to 25% in your payroll that you can cut. It's not going to be easy. It's not. I'm not saying it's going to be fun, but again, it's sort of a survival mechanism that you can, if you want to go that way. If you want to go that way.
So, are you talking about less? When you say deflate your payroll, are you telling camp owners to consider paying your summer staff less than you did the year before hourly? Or are you just saying reducing the number of employees, really thinking about jack of all trades versus someone that can do just one job and is pinholed in?
Okay, well, so the short answer to that is yes, Kelly. And so here in New Jersey, we are on a unalterable course to $15 an hour minimum wage in the next couple of years. You in Minnesota also, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There's no stopping that train. Doesn't matter what happens. Doesn't matter what happens to the economy. That train's going to stop at $15 an hour in about 3 years. So average counselor here makes about $3,000 if they're over the age of 18. So the answer is yes. You now have, that's why the hiring process thing becomes so key. You have to operate with less, and because you're being forced to pay a certain rate that is not the market rate. Our governments have created artificial demand for employment. Now, that's good and bad, and it's good in the sense that we're now offering a really competitive salary, but now I have to be that much more selective about who I put in here. And the type, that one counselor that carries the group. You have to trim those hiring processes to find those people, because it's not even a question. You have to operate with fewer people. Your tennis guy has to double as your bike guy. Your ropes person, when the period off, has to go and be a swim instructor. You have to do that, but you're paying them more money. So, that's sort of, we live, and I don't want to go too long, but we live in a very tradition-based culture in camp. And the danger for us is those traditions are wonderful, and they make our camps what they are and our identities. And, I was a sleepaway camp guy. Everybody knows that camp is all about tradition, but tradition and business practices do not go well together. Your business practices have to evolve every single year. You got to take a look at what you're doing and say, no, and force continuous improvement. So we get stuck sometimes in our camp traditions and go, well, this is the way we've always done it, and that bleeds over into our business practices, and this is the way we've always done it. And now you're in trouble. So you have to separate those two things.
Yeah, this to me is the most important message that I think that Jonathan shares with us, Kelly, is this idea that we in the camp industry have adopted practices that in some cases as camp owners are passed down generationally because your dad did it and your grandfather did it this way, your grandmother. And now it's time, for the first time in our industry's history, is to really take a much deeper dive into these practices. Earlier, Jonathan was talking a little bit about cash flow. And, how many of us, go through the cycle, if you happen to own your own facility and you've got anywhere from, as little as 10 acres to as much as 200, you go through a process of, I'm doing this in November and I'm doing this in December, because you always knew that when it comes to March and your money's coming in, you're going to be able to pay for that. Like those systems just need like super hand-holding and assessment. And I think, in talking to Jonathan and listening to him in other discussions, like this is a really important thing that everyone has to really think about. And when it comes to staff, I think about, my process for reconnecting with my leadership team, the people who've been with me for upwards of 20 years, who are teachers, who we just like they've been incredibly supportive, but there's going to be a transparency in all conversations with key people about, the mountain we're continuing to climb. And I think Jonathan, brings up some really important things where we need to take stock of all these issues. And I think it's this, obviously the staffing and facility improvements and just being totally on top of your cash in a way that you probably just automatically took for granted in the past.
Which means that being, I'm sorry, Kelly, but which means that in order to be on top of your cash, you really have to take, a scalpel and a microscope to every single managerial process in camp, everything, facility, marketing. You really have to just sit down and go, how is this process need to be updated for our current reality? Right. I mean, everybody talks about getting back to normal, but what part of normal do you really want to get back to? Right. You really want to, now's our chance to really take a look at, okay, we were able to operate, at a much smaller expense size. We were smaller also, but what lessons do we want to take from that last summer? So everything's on the table, and that's sort of part of the bad news. And I think part of the other bad news is that, spring, which is normally wicked hard for all of us. Oh my God, I thought I turned this off.
That's okay. Here, let's stop, and then let's start at the spring is typically hard for us. Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay.
Spring, which is really hard for all of us, just got a lot harder. It just got a lot worse. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, I just think, April, May, and June are just the hardest months of the year for, especially in day camp. Right. But, sleepaway camps too. But like, now we're backloading everything. We're really backloading everything because we're not going to be sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, to talk about the cash flow at the time, I think is a big takeaway for me that, I'm a last minute lady. So ordering everything in May is just my style. But, it really does make you think that, do I have the money today to pay for this? Because things may change with registration up until June 8th start, and campers might, change. So a couple of thoughts that I have, and I'm curious to hear from you, Jonathan and Howie, on this. Was one thing I thought about was reducing staff, reducing expenses. Are you increasing your pricing for this summer, or are you staying the same? The other thought I had was about staffing for camp owners listening, less staff, but with COVID, do you hire more floaters or subs for if a staff person is out or quarantine or however that works? So that's an interesting little balance here. Where do you meet in the middle?
So which question you want me to jump at first?
Let's
Because you asked like 3 of them.
I know, it's the way I operate. They're just, I say, let's talk first about reducing expenses, reducing the budget, cash flow, and did you keep your pricing the same or increase it this year?
Okay. So I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, but in the United States, currently right now, and depending on what channel you watch, for news, but about 50%, 40% of Americans are not comfortable sending their kids back to school yet. All right. And that's as of today. In order for us to get to any semblance of 2019 numbers, 100% of those 50% would have to be comfortable by April, May of next year. Now it's November, more or less. And, COVID is spiking all over the US. We're seeing the news. I don't see that happening. So to the long way to your first answer is, if my modeling is showing camp next summer at 70 to 80% of capacity, which means that, again, we have to now plan for small. And if I'm wrong, that's great. Well, then we're on the happy path. I'm wonderful. Vaccine comes out, everybody's comfortable. That's wonderful. But let's plan for that 70, 75% enrollment, being that we were at 50 or so this year, and build our models around that. Now, the second question about pricing, and I might be dead wrong on this, so I'm a little, I'm afraid to say, but I'm going to give you my opinion. And I just want to preface by saying I could be dead wrong, so nobody should take my advice. But I believe that a lot of the economic repercussions from this pandemic haven't hit yet. And this is something, Howie, that I was at. I'm the president of the New Jersey sort of government affairs project, and so I go to lots and lots of fundraisers on both sides, Democrat and Republican fundraisers. and I get to sit around with lots of people from lots of other industries, and it's really fascinating. So a couple weeks ago, I found myself at a table with, I don't know, 6 or 7 attorneys, which is always fun, because lawyers are such fun. And they got to talking about the incredibly huge court backlog in New Jersey of foreclosures and rental evictions that is in an absolute freeze right now because there's a moratorium on it. It's going to get lifted in December, and courts haven't even opened in New Jersey yet.
Wow.
And for lack of a better word, they said it was just going to be a tsunami of foreclosures, and that goes, that ripples all the way through the economy. So I'm concerned that maybe the economic snapback's not going to be that great. So I'm a little more conservative on pricing, Kelly, because I feel like I'd rather be in a position where I have to raise prices in spring than constantly be offering discounts. But many of my competitors are not. Many of my competitors are taking the opposite approach. They've raised, 5 to 10%. And maybe they're right. I don't know who's right on this one. I'm just taking a little bit. Again, I'm letting the cash flow give me the answer to that. So much of us, when we do pricing, we sort of like, put our finger up in the air and we're going, it feels like 2, 3, 4% this year to me, right? Okay. Well, I don't really take that approach. I let the cash flow and our average sale numbers dictate how we can price with the idea in mind that I don't think given that summer 2020 was obviously not profitable for anybody that I know of. Maybe there's some people that made money, but I think it was probably really difficult. And looking to summer 2021 to be break even or better as a guide. So you have those two things, you're weighing together, and it's just math. It's math and what market preference is. What you think the market can handle. So I'm not pushing prices that much this year. Okay. And I think there was a third part of your question.
Well, Howie wants to say something about pricing.
Well, I think that, for those of us who can't see what Jonathan's doing, but, I echo the finger up in the air and, the wind, which way is the wind blowing often has been an approach camp owners have taken to their pricing approaches in the past. But I do agree. I think that the whole approach to pricing, and I want to get into this a little later, so let's sort of, park this, but that pricing related to the messages and consumer behavior and how people are thinking about you are so intertwined more than ever now. And again, really depending on your market, those are really important things. But I want to pivot just for a moment to, is anything you've shared so far, Jonathan, specifically relevant to a sleepaway camp? We have the benefit, I'm also a sleepaway camp owner. And I'm curious in terms of some of the things you've talked about, principally cash flow and expenses, but is there an aspect of operating an overnight camp where this issue of the financial road takes any turn left or anything else you want to think about? Or do you think it's all, relatively consistent regardless?
I think it's consistent regardless. I think, for day camp, you're talking about, your transportation costs are huge, and sleepaway camp, your food costs are huge. I think that it's, again, it's just a math issue. It just depends on what your what the lines in your P&L statement are. I mean, we have lines in day camp that sleepaway camps don't have, and they have lines that we don't have. And at the end of the day, it's really about how much cash you have at any given time. So I think that the just like every other industry, the cash flow is sort of a universal piece to it. And I heard somebody say a joke once, just to talk about consumer behavior just for a quick second, that camp directors, if they wanted to commit suicide, the number one way was jumping off their egos. But it's not the fall that kills us. We die of starvation on the way down. So when I hear a lot of my colleagues talking about consumer behavior and how, well, our customers have to understand that this happened. Our customers have to understand that happened. I'm like, no, they don't. No, they don't. Wait a minute, we just got slapped with like the worst crisis in the last 30 years, and half of our clientele, or 100% of our clientele, just asked for full refunds, which 99% of camps could not give at the time. Right? I don't know of many camps. I only heard of one that was like, on demand, you owed me $5,000. I gave you $5,000 back. Right? We either gave them a combination of credits or stretched it out over time or did whatever. And now we're going to tell them that they have to pay us for camp early and follow the X, Y, and Z. hello, I don't know that we have that kind of power to shape consumer behavior. And just put yourself in your consumer's seat. You have two kids going to camp. Let's say it's day camp, and we'll make it easy. It's 10 or 12 grand or whatever you're laying out, right? Would you take that $300 or $400 discount for signing up early and paying early, or would you wait until May and make sure the camp got opened? And
Yeah.
I'll just hang on to that money for a little bit longer just to make sure everything's good, because they didn't even have the money to pay us back last year, so why am I giving them more money now? It's just sort of common sense. So and our leverage is gone. Our in day camp, our leverage is gone. You're going to tell me that, oh, I'm not going to have a spot for you in May? Really? Where
Right.
that might have been true 2 or 3 years ago when we were packed. I don't think, and it's like me calling up United and say, you really don't have any seats to that flight to Florida? Really? Everybody knows that you're going to be able to get on a plane. So, it's just, again, it's a full reboot of our reality as to what things are.
Well, we've all benefited from this approach to, shouting from the mountaintop of this approach related to scarcity, right? This idea that, hey, you know what, you got to get in now or it's going to be gone and you won't be in Johnny's cabin. Johnny won't be in his friend Mitchell's cabin moving forward. And I think that while that has benefited us in many ways for early registration, and many people have, of course, registered even before the summer has finished previously, I think having a really sober look at those approaches. And I think that, and at least it's been my experience so far with the opening of our registration, that, the long runway to ultimate decision making for families has been really appealing and much appreciated. And I think it speaks to, Jonathan's, message of transparent communication and what you're still working on and how things are developing so you can still deliver camp. But as for those of us who didn't operate and families rolled over, we're having, almost two sets of conversations, wanting to reassure that the money you've kept with us, we're committed to doing whatever you want with it, and you've got a long runway. And those families who chose to get a refund, and we did it in whatever time frame we were able to manage, which, you're right, Jonathan, a lot of people were very patient with many of us as we did it, trying to get them to have that confidence to get on board. In fact, for the first time, we're jumping on the Zoom, bandwagon. My wife and I are hosting Zoom calls with interested constituencies of parents so they can actually see us and just do that reassurance. So we're looking at all kinds of different ways. It's all changing, so they can, look you in the eye to some extent over their webcam to see that, what you wrote in that letter, that you're sincere about. And I think more of us will be doing that over the coming months because, that's what they want to know. But at the end of the day, they're going to take their time. And I think that's the reality.
And so you have to plan your cash around backloading the majority of tuition coming in. Ours used to come in, 70% of it we'd have by February. Now I'm looking at 80% in May. And
Right.
that changes our entire cash flow model. That changes. And I was having a conversation with one of our credit card providers, and the conversation was going along the lines of, listen, when we put this billing in May, you can't make me wait a week for this money. Like, I don't want to be waiting, for these e-checks for like 2 weeks, whatever. I need turnover fast. And he said the most interesting thing to me. He said, really, this is not going to be a problem because banks love it when your billing is that close to delivering your service. It's a huge liability, as we learned very quickly last summer, right? It's a huge liability to have that cash and not be able to perform a service. Right? You guys know this better than anybody else. Anybody that didn't operate, is sitting with several $1 million worth of liability on their books, or rolling over huge credits. So, I don't want to be caught in that situation again. I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's unlikely. I think I'm like very, very comfortable that we're all going to open. But I don't want to be caught there again because it nearly put all of us out of business. I mean, and the part that scares me about this, Howie, is really the camps that can't get a good handle on their cash flow or that have rolled over large credits. If they don't open for summer 2021, it hurts everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Because, the word will get out. that, not only did you not give them a refund, but their credit just went into bankruptcy court, and, maybe you'll get a few cents on the dollar 8 years from now. And so really we all have to sort of, as a community, help each other get through whatever in whatever ways we can, which is why I'm really sort of passionate about making sure people understand this part of the equation, because it's just math, folks. It's just addition and subtraction. It's not, it's not something that like, oh my God, I have to have an MBA in finance to figure out. It's just something that you train yourself to do, and a discipline that you kind of live by.
Yeah.
I was wondering.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, how for those camps that did not open, I think they are really in a vulnerable place with those families that rolled over those credits. And for us personally, one of the enticing features about rolling over the full payments in full that you had was you get in the first registration phase, but you also lock in 2020 pricing. So we have to raise prices because we promised that those people got to 2020 pricing. So if we don't increase it, it may just be 1%, but we have to increase because it's what we said we were going to do at the time. So we definitely are vulnerable. We have to keep with those promises. And, with those deposits, like you said, in a day camp pod, people are going to be less apt to want to put down a large deposit because they're going to say, oh, well, I need to know that you're going to open and my money is going to be carried through and provide a product.
Right. And it's not, it's very egocentric of our entire industry to think that because we've done it for 20 or 30 years this way, that all of a sudden people are going to think, oh, I just, I completely have it. Now, I could be wrong, but I like to plan for the not so happy path and then be pleasantly surprised. If we go down the happy path, that's great. And, it's all good. But I want to be able to plan for what I think consumer behavior is going to tell us. And to me, it's common sense right now that people are going to be a little reticent to lay out thousands of dollars months before the summer comes. Have
you opened your registration, Jonathan?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are you seeing?
Small deposits, very small deposits. I mean, a couple $100s is a registration fee. Some of which we had the ability and I know that a lot of camps can't do this, but it was my goal to start fiscal 2021 clean. So I wanted to flush out all my credits and all my refunds and everything so that I knew what my actual operating gross revenue number is going to be in 2021. So what we did was, for example, and this could be good, may or may not be good advice for somebody, but what we did, if you didn't come for summer 2020 and you paid us $5,000 and we gave you 50% of that in a cash refund, and you owed us, we owe you now $2,500, and you enrolled, Kelly, for summer 2021. We just took that $2,500 right off the top, and whatever our tuition was, let's say it was $6,000. Now we just carried the $3,500 over as a gross revenue number into 2021. So when I look at my 2021 revenue number, that's my real revenue. That's my budget number. Okay, I'm not floating any more credits in there. Now, that may or may not be the best thing to do from a tax perspective, and I'm not here giving tax advice. I'm just, as financial manager of my organization, I am saying that I want to know what my real number is. Now, you can arrive at that any number of different ways, and I'm not saying my way is the best way. So we opened early registration, and we said, very small deposits, couple $100. We're going to give you another small bill in January just to make sure you're still on with the program, and we let everybody know. And Howie, I have no idea. I have no idea whether that money's actually going to come in. We only allow credit cards and e-checks, no checks. So we're going to auto bill everybody. At that point, we're going to remind them. The other thing we're doing is we're being exceedingly transparent about our refund policy. And we're pounding it into parents. It's on our website. It's in our material. This is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen if there's a weather event, if there's a closure. We're just pounding that out so everybody knows what they're getting into. And we're going to put that 20% bill out, or 15-20% bill out in January, and the rest of it's coming in May 1.
Yeah.
And that 20% is our lifeline, so that keeps us eating macaroni and cheese all winter, Kraft. Not Annie's. We're just
no Annie's. I was just gonna say no Annie's.
Yeah, we're not at
that
Annie's
is
yet.
Too shishi for this right now.
Exactly. So, but you know what, Kelly? We graduated from ramen because a month ago we were at ramen. We were at the ramen noodles. So we were thinking, okay, we could live on ramen for a few months, but we moved up to mac and cheese. So, that's pretty good.
Progress. You're on the upswing.
We're on the upswing. On the upswing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jonathan, I was wondering, with your involvement in your state camping association and your connections to, legislators, et cetera, do you really feel in New Jersey that officials in your state house, do they get camp? Do they understand the financial challenges that the industry is facing? Because I find it very interesting. Kelly and I talk about what's happening in Minnesota, and I know what we're doing here in Ontario and Canada to a greater extent. What's your sense about the industry being recognized as, in crisis, in trouble, and all that stuff? I know that there are programs that the government put out, but specifically, we're in your neighborhood. What's happening there?
How politically correct should I be in this answer? I wish everybody could see Kelly's face on this one. You want me to be really honest, or you want me to go middle of the road on this? I'll start middle of the road and we'll go from there. There is zero oxygen right now for summer camps in the political world. Right. Zero. We are not. And I can't tell you how many fundraisers and events I've been to with state senators, with assemblymen, congressmen. Just this past fall, I've been making the rounds, and I do that because we spent every single penny of political capital we had to get open this year. Right. And my government affairs counsel, Claudine Leone, is literally one of the best human beings on the planet as far as I'm concerned. And at every turn last spring, she got in. She used her connections and the connections that we've made over the past 12 years since the New Jersey Government Affairs Project has been in existence, to get into Governor Murphy, to let him know that we needed X amount of time to open up. We needed X amount of whatever it was, lead time to get going. And I joke around because the last miracle that we had in our pocket, and I don't know if you guys aren't from New Jersey, and this sort of went down, was we opened camp, like my camps opened up for 7 weeks this summer. Most camps in New Jersey open up for 6. The week we opened, Governor Murphy issued a public spaces mask mandate. And we didn't have to operate with masks this summer at camp. But it was an immediate flood of parents and staff and everyone around the state saying, are we now going to have to wear masks? Now, he went on MSNBC at about 8:30 in the morning, and he had not written the executive order yet. He was just making the announcement. By the time they wrote the executive order that afternoon, our government affairs person got into his staff and had camps exempted from that mask order. Yeah. So it is so important to maintain your political contacts in whatever state you're in, whatever country you're in. Politicians are the same everywhere. Even if there's no oxygen, you got to get out there, get in front of them, go to the fundraisers, shake hands, because there's going to be a time where you're going to need to call, Senator X or Congressman Y or Assemblyman B and say, hey, you know what? I really need your help here with this regulatory agency and understanding what we're doing. And if you haven't put in the time to do that, it's not going to work. So it's yes, I don't feel like camps are even, we're not even a cork in the ocean right now to the giant tides of politics. And that might be contrary to what some of our associations may say or do. But I've been doing this political thing in New Jersey for the last, 10 years. And politicians at great are making you believe that they're fully listening and fully engaged and on your side 110%, but that's why they're politicians, because right. they have that particular skill. So it's a very tough political environment. And I think the danger for resident camps is because there's no oxygen, nobody's thinking about it. They need to get cleared a lot earlier than, day camps. We got to go to operate in New Jersey and a lot of other states. But you have to go market to parents, and parents have to be comfortable that you're going to open. So if somebody says to you, day camp in Minnesota, are you sure you're going to open? Can you answer that question honestly if the regs haven't been published for that state yet? And I think that's a big hurdle. But It's
Well, I'm glad you brought up your refund policy, and everyone will have to come check your website to see, because I think that's what's going to be really important, is being very clear about, if you have a mini outbreak again, I hope you don't, but if you do, did you refund those parents? Will you refund those parents this year? What is the backing out date? What will they get back? I think that's a really important thing for camps to be thinking about and be transparent about, because we
right.
don't know.
And let's be clear.
Like.
Let's be clear, Kelly, right? We got away with credits and, refunds overtime last year. Ain't going to happen this year. No way. You better be ready to give 100% back and have your finance ready, your credit lines ready, whatever it is, if you want to stay open, because people aren't going to go for that a second time. So God forbid there is an outbreak or whatever else happens. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to push that billing off till May, because I didn't want to be in that position again. And you really have to sit on your cash. You really have to just manage your cash and make sure that you're not, you're doing as little spending as possible until time comes, because at the end of the day, people just want camp to open. They're not going to care whether you got the new water slide or, you put in the new turf field, or they just want camp to open. They just want their kids to get out and play and have that camp experience. So it's now incumbent upon us to be the stewards of what we have in fact, that dedicated our lives to. We now have to be the stewards of that, and a big part of that is the fiscal responsibility that you have to show during the year to build the confidence back in our industry. And that's the number one thing. I mean, with all the stuff that's going around now and all the things that I'm hearing, and the different online seminars and whatever, it's really, none of it matters if camps don't get open, if you don't get open. None of it matters. None of the social stuff matters. None of the programmatic stuff matters. If you don't have the wherewithal to open, you can't do any good. Like Jack Welch used to say, winning is everything, right? And winning means you can communicate, you can contribute more to your community, you can pay your staff more, you can deliver better services. It's all about winning from a business sense, and it's important. It's important to be there. So that's sort of where my head is at. With this kind of stuff. And just so your listeners know, we also created an instructional video. That we have, and I'll get it out to you guys with the Vimeo, with the address for it, so you can see exactly how to do the things that we're talking about. And if anybody wants to email us and walk us through we'll be happy to email you our template and walk you through how we use it. We're happy to share that with everybody too. Whenever that, I don't know how you communicate with everybody by email.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes, and when we air this episode, we'll definitely provide our listeners with the link to that. So that's great, and I think that'll be a great resource for those of us who need a refresher or an update, or to have a look at sort of what are some approaches that people take. Jonathan, I know I'm going to turn things over to Kelly in just a moment around inspiration, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But I had one, a quote that I've been sort of living by for the last little while, as I start to wrap my head around the journey ahead to 2021, is the quote of necessity is the mother of invention. And I'm wondering, when you hear that, and when you think about how it's sort of that quote or that statement has shaped what you're doing, what do you think of specifically? I know some things I get the sense you've already touched on, but when you hear that, what comes to mind as a camp operator?
Well, what comes to mind right away as you said that was, the number one is necessity is the mother of invention. And I think from what I saw last summer, camp was so necessary for the kids who came. They'd been home, they'd been in quarantine for so long. And for them, the necessity to us is not only the innovations and all the regulatory stuff and everything else that we had to do, the hand washing stations and the sanitizing equipment and all that other good stuff. And we found creative ways to get around it and get around the programming. But the necessity of the experience was insanely it was so essential to their developmental progress as children this summer. I still get emotional when I think about that last week of camp. I still really do. It was so sad to watch the connections that we formed get torn apart by just the summer ending. And we, again, in rethinking process, now one of the things nobody could have predicted, Howie, was all these schools ending on Thanksgiving, all the colleges. And so now all of a sudden, the kid, the 4-star counselor you hired comes up to you and says, I have to go back to school August 5th. I'm like, what? Yeah, well, they've shifted our, so we had to act, on like literally spin on a dime, and nobody thought of that. Like there was nobody, that was thinking that way. And all of a sudden schools were changing their schedules, and and it was affecting us in all sorts of ways. But yeah, the necessity to me is not, we're camp directors, we're innovators. That's what we do. We're extremely resourceful people. Otherwise you'd be an accountant or something. You're not, you wouldn't be in this line of work. So that part of it was the easy part for us. I think the necessity was finding ways to, again, do what we love. It's what we've devoted our lives to. And I'll come back at you with my other favorite quote that I'm using this year, which I don't know exactly who this is attributed to, but somebody once said, revenue is vanity. And we all at times got caught up in, oh, my camp's grossing this much or that much, right? Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, cash is reality. And we have to get back to, we can only do what our cash flow says we can do, right? So all decisions are now either cash flow based or customer experience based, and it's cash flow based at the time. Right. So you either have the money to do it or you don't. And if you don't have the money, you better be able to figure out the way to finance it. Right. If it's going to enhance the customer experience, let's talk about what the effect on cash is, and then let's figure out how to get it done. Or if it's not really going to enhance the customer experience, it's not on the table this year. Right. And what we discovered by operating last summer was there are a lot of things that we thought enhanced the customer experience, but they really didn't. They really didn't. They really weren't that necessary. Camp survived without a camp show. We did a virtual movie. I mean, like things like that, and things that we normally spend a lot of money on. But I don't know if the expectations are going to stay low like that. But for now, I think we just have to stay in that zone where, this is how we're running it.
Wow.
Ooh.
Sorry.
Nope. All good. All good food for that. Absolutely.
Sorry.
Well, maybe you already gave us your inspirational quote, but it's our ending of the show that we always do, Jonathan, where we leave with something that's inspiring us. So it can be a book, an article, podcast, documentary, leadership, anything else that you would like to share. So would you like to go first with what you would like to share that's inspiring you right now?
I've been doing this a long time, and I don't want to say that I'm at the end of my career, because I don't feel that way, but I've certainly been doing it a long time, and I know that it takes a toll. But I was so inspired by what happened last summer, and to me it was a huge challenge to get open, but I was absolutely committed to the fact that I knew it was the right thing to do. And I don't want to say this, and I'm not talking politics here. I'm just saying, like, I studied and got people, doctors and pediatricians, and looked at the data, and I knew that it was pretty safe for kids to come to camp, and our operating thing said it was. But as we go into next summer, I really think we're facing literally the biggest challenge this industry has ever seen. And we spend a lot of time in our various camp associations talking about our own relevance and saying, how important what we do is, and how we answer that question, what is it that you do the rest of the year? We're always answering that. So the inspiration is that I know for a fact now, and I look at my kids and I look at the parents and I talk to the parents, I know for an absolute fact that we have to get open next summer as an industry. We have to. What we're doing is in so many ways more essential than what they're getting from school right now, because they're not getting it from school. Right. So there's no quote or passage in a book that I have to inspire everybody other than the actual experience of, oh my God, the power of play in children is something that is absolutely essential to their development. And it's not just children, it's any sentient being. I don't care whether it's puppies or giraffes or dolphins. Kids learn through play. And camp is the last vestige, the last venue where we can teach them that, where they can get together with other kids and learn what they need to do to become healthy adults. So We have to get open. We had to get open last summer, and we have to get open again, and we have to survive as an industry. So we have to now, and I will give you one quote because I just thought of it. I'm sorry. But if you want to improve your game, right, you don't focus on your strengths. You focus on your weaknesses. The weakest part of your game, if you elevate it, whatever the sport is going to elevate your entire game. It's incumbent upon us as camp professionals to say, what is the weakest part of our game, right? As business owners, as business operators, what's the absolute weakest part of your game? Is it operations? Is it marketing? Is it finance? Is it staffing? And really, really focus in and hone in on that weak part of your game to get that up, because that's what's gonna see you through these tough times. And that's what's going to get you through it. That and some really good financial management. And if you don't have the resources, if you're not comfortable with it, and do not farm this out to your accountant. Do not. Right. Okay. You go out of business, your accountant's like, oh, I got to find another client. Okay. Right. I'm sorry, unless you're married to your accountant, it's not, that going to be that big of a deal for them. I'm sure they have your best interests at heart. This is stuff you need to do yourself and need to learn to do yourself. So get in there, crunch the numbers, and make it work, and you can get open. And we're all in this together. We can all make it. We can help each other and through best practices. Even though we don't have conferences anymore, we can still help each other through venues like this to get us open next summer, because we have to get open. We really do. We have to. All camps need to get open again. Sorry, was that good?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Yes,
we do. Yes, we can, and yes, we can, and yes, we do.
And yes, we will.
And yes, we will.
Yes, we will. Yep. There's no failure is not an option.
No, it's not. We got to be there for those kids. All right, Howie, do you want to share your inspiring item?
Yeah, his name is Jonathan Gold. He just gave me my inspiration. No, no, I appreciate the way you captured that. I've been doing this for a long time as well, Jonathan, and we've got a clear focus here at our camps about the optimism and the confidence that whatever we have to do, we're going to get it done. And to that extent, I'm inspired by a quote that I learned at my very first Michael Brandwein keynote at our camp back in 1987. He came up to Toronto to do a keynote at our day camp, which my wife and I now own, and it's been our family camp for 60 years. He introduced me to the concept of the participation principle, that people take better care of things they help create. And if you've ever been to a Michael Brandwein session over many decades, you've heard him share that. And I feel that more than ever now, because we've gotten the great opportunity through some support, through some government grants for hiring under 30s to be able to employ them at our camp. Normally that grant would be provided to subsidize some staffing costs in the summer, but because we didn't run, the government was able to now transfer that time frame to the winter season. So I have an opportunity to hire for 16 weeks up to 10 people who are under 30, who are key people in my management division, like their section heads, division heads, people who have been there for us. And I'm excited to begin a process where they're going to look with Sari and I on how to make camp awesome and all the things we need to do. So I've been thinking about this. It's one thing for Sari and I to sit here and on a daily basis write something on a piece of paper, knowing that we may have to crumple it up and throw it away 2 days later because the guideline is going to change. I get to work with a group of people moving forward that are really know camp, invested in camp, love that they've grown up here, and they're going to play a hand in shaping the 2021 summer. And my inspiration is the work that I'm about to do with those people, but also the fact that their perspectives are going to be incredibly helpful as we sort of get through the successes people had, the challenges that still are before us, and get to a place where we can, with the kind of confidence we need to say to a family, camp's going to be awesome, and we're going for it, and it's going to be great. So that's where I'm at. That's my inspiration, and I thought I'd share that. But that's where I'm at.
Howie, I told you to stop giving me reasons to move to Canada. Can we just stop doing that, please? Please? I'm gonna get my little canoe and canoe across the boundary waters.
There you go.
It must be a quote thing today, because I have a quote that I want to share from The Infinite Game from Simon Sinek.
Oh, good book. Yeah.
And for me, it speaks to the infancy of my camp ownership. We'll call it that. And the idea of victory versus fulfillment. So it's a long quote, but I'm going to read it.
Victory versus what?
Victory versus fulfillment.
Oh, okay.
So a signpost stands at a fork in the road, pointing in one direction. The sign says victory. Pointing in another direction, the sign says fulfillment. We must pick a direction, but which one will we choose? If we choose the path to victory, the goal is to win. We will experience the thrill of competition as we rush towards the finish line. Crowds gather to cheer for us, and then it's over, and everyone goes home, and hopefully we can do it again. But if we choose the path to fulfillment, the journey will be long. There will be times in which we must watch our step. There will be times when we can stop to enjoy the view. We keep going, we keep going. Crowds gather to join us on this journey. And when our lives are over, and those who have joined us on the path of fulfillment will keep going without us and inspire others to join them too. And that, I think, we're in a part where we have to watch our step, but I think it speaks to this time is really indicative of if we want to make it to that fulfillment part of camp and being forever and that going on, then we just have to really think about fulfillment and not just the instant win and victory. So I wanted to share that. I like that quote.
That's a great quote. It's just, it's so true. We have to navigate some really choppy waters to get to that point. And the most important thing is getting to that point. So there'll be little victories along the way, but that's exactly how I felt over the summer. Like I was navigating a rocky river at night without a moon. Didn't know where the next rock was going to come up, but you just worry about it one step at a time, and we'll get there.
Yeah,
I love it.
You got it. Great quote, Kelly. Thank you for sharing that. Jonathan, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for your insight, your straddling political correctness, and saying what I know our listeners will appreciate what's on your mind, and I think we're the better for it. So with that, Jonathan, if any of our guests want to learn more about your camps or get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Jonathan at oakcrestdaycamp.com is my email. You can go on our website and you can call here. I'm happy to talk to anybody. God knows there's not a lot going on right now in camp. So you can give us a call, and we'll post that cash flow video, that instructional video for you. And again, if you want any help with that, we're happy to do it. So it's be happy to talk to camp people always.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate the generosity.
And down the line, Howie, as we get closer, we should do one on how to control your summer burn rate. Your burn rate. Do because I think the most challenging thing is keeping, especially now that we've changed our model to where we're getting cash in later and we're going to be spending cash later, controlling that burn rate so you end up the summer with a good starting cash position for your following year now becomes critical. And we've developed a tool for that too, and that could be a topic of another podcast as we get closer.
We're penciling you in. That's awesome. That's great. We'll put that in the calendar. And Kelly, how do people get a hold of you?
All right. It is Kelly with a Y at hiddenpinesranch.com.
Amazing. And if you want to reach out to me, it's Howie at camprobinhood.ca, and camprobinhood.ca is the website of our camp, and check it out. Please do not forget that you can find all of our show notes at gocamp.pro/COP. You can find the resources that we mentioned in this episode and lots of good stuff from our show and other Go Camp Pro podcasts out there. They're all amazing. We hope you enjoyed this. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. And we will see you next time.